Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Brooklyn's own Toddy D, and tonight I'm going to discuss the fallout of last night's WWE TLC pay-per-view, the last of not only the year, but of the decade. Let's start off with the opening match during the pre-show. You had Humberto Carrillo versus Andrade. Let me tell you something, guys. I thought this was a great match. It's too bad it wasn't part of the regular card, because there were a few matches that we're going to get into that, in my opinion, were very much lackluster. But with that being said, very fast-paced back-and-forth match. They're, starting to give the nod, I guess, to Humberto Carrillo. He picked up another victory. And basically, I do not like this whole friction between Andrade and Zelina Vega. I'm really hoping that WWE does not split them up and go what I like to call the Seth Rollins-Becky Lynch route, where they pair up Andrade with Charlotte Flair and possibly Zelina Vega with Aleister Black. I think Aleister Black is perfectly fine on his own, and I think Andrade should continue to have Zelina Vega in his corner. It was more effective as he started out as a heel. She would interfere in the matches, and moving forward, I think Andrade by himself would fall flat and be rather boring since he's not much of a talker. So with that being said, during the pre-show, a little interesting having the Revival come out and actually go off on Booker T, which I thought was really interesting. And they started bringing up Harlem Heat and, Stevie Ray and, their old tag team Harlem Heat, and how the Revival wanted to take Booker T's 2 rings and basically call him out. So, not for nothing, if you look at Booker T, he may be up there in age, but my man still got fuel in the tank. He's got his wrestling school in Texas. He's still in great shape. I, for one, for the old school feel, would love to see Booker T and Stevie Ray, revitalize Harlem Heat. And, not for nothing, probably the Revival would go over, but I would love to see nothing more than a Harlem Heat beatdown and teach these boys a little bit of respect. I happen to be a big fan of the Revival. I think they're awesome. They kind of remind me of the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard when they were in WWE back in the F days. And I think the Revival is really good. The only issue I have with them is, a little bit of the height, but, you can look past that when you have great tag team technicians and, they're really good in the ring. And basically, even if Harlem Heat does lose and give them the rub, maybe it's something that the Revival can use. Basically, Baron Corbin tells everybody how he put, Kurt Angle into retirement and how he beat Kurt Angle, at WrestleMania. So, the Revival can have that little tag to their, belt stating that, they took out Harlem Heat. So, we'll see what happens, more for that moving forward. But now moving on to the next match. I shouldn't say the next match. It should be the opening match of the actual show. You have a ladder match, for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. You have the Revival that I'm talking about going up against the New Day. And, I happen to be a fan of Kofi Kingston and Big E. I don't like the whole pancake thing as the New Day. As performers, I think they're great. But I predicted, I didn't get to put it out there on my podcast, but I said to myself that the New Day would be going over and they would retain the tag titles. I was correct. So moving forward, hopefully the Usos will come back, or, we'll get some new competition for the New Day, because, they've been tag team champions, 6, 7 times. Let's give someone else a chance. Let's, give somebody the rub. And hopefully after that, with Xavier Woods being out injured, hopefully Kofi will go back into main eventing or at least mid-carding, and the same for Big E. I like to see them split up. I like to see Big E and Kofi do their thing separately. I think they have a lot to offer as singles wrestlers, not just one, but both of them. And hopefully within a year or less, if the Achilles heel operation, was a success for Xavier Woods, hopefully he'll come back, better than ever. And either the New Day will remain a trio, or maybe they'll be off, wrestling on their own eventually. Now, the next match, in my opinion, by far was match of the night. And that is Aleister Black against Buddy Murphy. These two, they left everything laying on the canvas. They beat the crap out of each other. I think Aleister Black suffered a broken nose. He was bleeding for most of the match. The kicks between the two of them were outrageous. Buddy Murphy is insane. I think he has a great future in WWE. Doesn't matter if he lost and Aleister Black went over. Either way, Buddy Murphy is going to be something to deal with moving forward. He's going to have a great career as long as he remains injury-free. I can say the same for Aleister Black. I think they're both awesome. Not for nothing, if they wanted to tag together, I think they'd be an awesome, phenomenal tag team. Let's just say if the two of them had, like the Sheamus Cesaro kind of treatment where they beat the crap out of each other for several months, have the best out of falls matches, and then eventually become a team. Can you imagine if Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black were a team? I think that would be awesome. But, moving forward, then we had an open challenge for the tag team titles for the Raw Tag Team Champions, the Viking Raiders. For one, I was hoping that the AOP were going to come out and just demolish them. But unfortunately, the OC came out, the supposed world's greatest tag team. So, that match, I knew obviously the Viking Raiders were going to, go over. I thought there was going to be an actual pinfall. I was a little disappointed in the double count out. That was kind of, it was kind of sad, kind of disappointing because, it's a pay-per-view and you want to see, a clear-cut winner. But, moving forward, hopefully the Viking Raiders, they're going to, hopefully do the honors to the AOP eventually, and then the AOP will become tag champions, especially now that they're running with Seth Rollins, and we'll get into that in a bit. So moving forward after that, open challenge match, you had a double count out. And then up next was the TLC match between Roman Reigns and the King, Baron Corbin. Now, personally, I really was hoping that Roman Reigns was going to win this match and, hoping that this would be the end of this disgusting rivalry, if you even want to call it a rivalry. I mean, it was so stupid in my opinion. I mean, it would have been cool enough just to have Roman Reigns, handcuffed to the post and just torment him and beat him down. But the whole dog food thing and throwing it in his face and all that other crap, I just thought it was just, unnecessary. And to me, it was just a weak storyline. It kind of took me back to when Al Snow had his Chihuahua and he was wrestling Big Boss Man, and in the storylines during the Attitude Era, which was even more vulgar because the Big Boss Man supposedly kidnapped Al Snow's dog, and allegedly, he killed the dog and then fed Snow his own dog. I mean, it was really disgusting and gross. But at the end of the day, obviously it's not true, and it was kind of funny. But this whole thing last night just reminded me of like a weak version storyline of that. So, I'm really hoping that eventually they kill this rivalry. It looks like Roman Reigns will get the upper hand because, during the match you had Scott Dawson, you had Dash Wilder, you had Dolph Ziggler, you had all of Corbin's guards. I mean, when I saw that the deck was, stacked against Roman Reigns, and I realized that eventually, Corbin's going to lay him out and get the win because, between the beatdown that Reigns took and also once Ziggler did the zigzag on him and also did his wannabe HBK Sweet Chin music, I knew it was just a matter of time. So, hopefully in the new year or before the new year, either way, Roman Reigns will get his revenge and hopefully he can move on to bigger and better things. And, Royal Rumble's coming around, and that's the start of WrestleMania season. So the last thing I want to see as a fan is have Roman Reigns go up against Corbin at WrestleMania. That would be like a total shit match. Just my opinion. So then, moving forward, we had the WWE Universal title match. Now, I found this very interesting because if you guys have been listening to my podcast, the Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast, that is, I said in episode 4 that in my opinion, just my opinion, I felt that Bray Wyatt should come out just wearing the sweater as the Yowie Wowie character minus the Fiend mask. Because I think Bray Wyatt on his own without the mask is more effective than with the mask. And what I mean by that is, he comes out all happy and smiling one minute, then he has that demonic look on his face the next. And that's all without the mask. So on occasion, I could see maybe wearing the mask. But, I mean, me personally, I don't like the red lighting. And the mask is kind of hokey to me. I mean, it's not even that scary. It's just kind of like a Halloweenish kind of mask. So when Bray Wyatt came out last night wearing just his cardigan and as the Yowie Wowie Bray Wyatt, going up against The Miz, I thought that was awesome because the whole storyline with The Miz had the Yowie Wowie Bray Wyatt character in the sweater, going into his home, giving him and his wife a hard time with their kid. And it was just great storytelling. And, the look on the Miz's face during the interview prior to the match, you could see like the disgust and just the hatred he has, and it was just a great build to the storyline. It was a quick, fast build, but better than some, most lately because, back in the day, they would have very nice slow builds leading up to the, to the big match. Now everything today in WWE land is pretty much rushed. So showing little vignettes and showing The Miz getting interviewed at his house and then, being interrupted by the Bray Wyatt character, I thought was done very, very well. I enjoyed it. I mean, I knew that Bray Wyatt was going to win and go over. It was, obvious that The Miz wasn't going to become the new champion. But either way, they told a good story. It was a great match. And then, at the end of the match, having the return of Daniel Bryan, I thought was really cool. And if any of you guys were on Twitter today, they did the 10-year challenge of Daniel Bryan, 10 years ago as opposed to now. And, both picks, he's got the short hair with, a little bit of scruff in his beard. And, without, aside from his eyes, today you can tell he's a little older, but the photos look almost the same. I mean, Daniel Bryan is better off with the short hair. The long hair makes him look like a deranged old man. So I think he's better off just keeping the short hair. And it's going to be interesting to see Daniel Bryan against Bray Wyatt, hopefully at the Royal Rumble for the, WWE, the SmackDown title, or whatever it's called these days, heavyweight title. But I really feel that Bray Wyatt should continue coming out as himself, as that yowie wowie, character, and, keep the mask to the side for a while. And then, maybe after a while, the fans will want it and it'll become, more interesting. I think if you use it too much with the red lights and the mask, in my opinion, I feel it's overkill. So, it should be interesting moving forward if Bray Wyatt's going to come out the way he has been coming out. And, me personally, I like that character better. So then after that match, we had the tables match between Bobby Lashley and Rusev. And, I was really disappointed. I was hoping that Rusev was going to go over. I figured, it was the payoff, being tormented for all these months, being allegedly divorced and having his wife cheat on him and having them jump him and do all this crap to him. I figured, this was a perfect time for Rusev to get his due, win the match, lock on that accolade and have them say Rusev Day. I was really hoping for it. So, maybe eventually Rusev will get his due and he'll get some payback. I, for one, hope that happens because, I'm a Bobby Lashley fan. I think he's great. But this whole storyline to me is pure garbage. I would love, much rather see Bobby Lashley go up against somebody like Brock Lesnar. I mean, that'd be like, to me, it's a dream match. You have two guys, pretty equal in size and build, former MMA fighters, wrestlers, both have collegiate backgrounds. I mean, I think it would be a great match. But, if it's not Bobby Lashley, me personally, I like to see Drew McIntyre in 2020 go after Brock Lesnar. I really hope it's not the that fighter dude, whatever his name is, that was at Crown Jewel, Tyson Fury, I think his name was. He's been, talking a lot of trash on the internet lately, trying to call out Brock Lesnar. I mean, obviously we know it's a show, we know it's entertainment, but I, for one, would love to see Brock Lesnar just shut Tyson Fury's mouth and just knock him the hell out because I hate these stars that come into WWE and they get to go over. And to me, they just make all the wrestlers and all the workers look bad. It stems back from years and years. I mean, back in WrestleMania, you had Hogan and T. I mean, I haven't missed one WrestleMania. I've seen them all live. We'll get into that at another time. But having a star come in with no background and have them go over, makes the wrestlers look like crap. Think about how Money Mayweather went up against Big Show at WrestleMania, and he had the brass knucks, and they had a funny ending to the storyline. But I don't give a damn how good Money Mayweather is. You get a 7-foot giant, and he gets his meat hooks on your scrawny little neck. He's gonna kick your ass and put you out. So it's things like that piss me off. But let's not get off topic. But moving forward, hopefully Bobby Lashley will get out of this horrific storyline, and Rusev as well, and Lana was saying on the internet this past week that she was getting death threats, and she was being protected and all this nonsense. She should be getting death threats purely for her bad acting alone. But that's just my opinion. I mean, I think she's horrible. So, after the tables match, with Bobby Lashley and Rusev, Bobby Lashley, as I said, he won the match. And then they took you to a backstage segment with the Street Profits. And not for nothing, I'm a huge fan of the Street Profits. I think they're hilarious. I think they're great. I'm hoping that they get a decent run in the future. But their backstage antics make me laugh. And when they suggested that Bobby Lashley, have a vasectomy, I thought that was hilarious. And then all of a sudden, if you remember, a big fight had broken out. And, the Street Profits joined in. You saw Baron Corbin. He's fighting with Roman Reigns. You had the New Day. You had the Revival, Dawson and Wilder involved. I think Dolph Ziggler was there. Matter of fact, I think Corbin's guards were involved. So that was a pretty cool little segment in the background, watching the Street Profits get involved as well, since they didn't have an actual match. And then last but not least, we had the tables, ladders, and chairs match for the women's tag team titles. You had the Kabuki Warriors, being Asuka and Kairi Sane, going up against Becky Lynch, the Raw Women's Champion, and Charlotte Flair. So, I knew from the get-go that the Kabuki Warriors were going to go over and keep the titles. I figured there would be more, dissension to the team, having, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, have like arguments with each other and, getting in each other's faces more often than they did because of this whole rivalry and, historical past that they had. So, Kabuki Warriors, as we know, they went over. And if you look back to that match, and I also read about it today, it looks like Kairi Sane, suffered a concussion. And if that's the fact, I'm kind of disappointed in Charlotte Flair. She should have realized when she was doing that god-awful spear outside the ring, and to even add to it, she leaned over and she smacked Kairi Sane right in the face. What's up with that? She should realize that she's potentially injured. You can tell she was blowing bad spots. She couldn't even throw the chair over the top rope into the ring. So obviously something was going on. And, they weren't really focusing on, what was possibly going on. And they just continued, wrestling. And, speaking of the women's match, they let that be the main event. And the last thing I would do is dump on the women's wrestlers because of this whole evolution. I'm all about equal opportunities, but I'm also about equal opportunities for people who can work equally as well. And, that main event to me did not belong as the main event for TLC. The main event, bar none, for TLC should have been Bray Wyatt against The Miz. It's a heavyweight title match, and they have a big, feel to it with the whole, storyline leading up to it, how Bray Wyatt's interfering in Miz's private life with his family, and it was a pretty decent build. And I, for one, thought that The Miz and Bray Wyatt should have been the main event. You could have put the women's tag title match second to last or third to last, and just the way they, had that show lined up in the order it was in, to me, wasn't the correct way of doing things. So now this coming Wednesday, we got the Wednesday Night Wars. You see I got my AEW hat on. My birthday was last week, and the missus hooked me up really nice. She got me a nice AEW hooded jacket on the website on ProWrestlingTees.com. Give you a free plug. So I got my AEW hat with that, and also a nice AEW winter hat. So, I'm all stocked up. I even got an AEW coffee mug. We don't have it here, but the next time maybe it'll be here on Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast, and we'll show the mug off as well. So Wednesday night should be pretty good. Chris Jericho is going up against Jungle Boy, the late, great Luke Perry's son. So I'm kind of looking forward to that match. But, I know it's a space filler for the end of the year. No disrespect to Jungle Boy. But, you have a guy like Chris Jericho, so you want to see a good title feel match. Like I, for one, I'm looking forward to this whole storyline with the Inner Circle trying to get John Moxley to join. You know as well as I do it's not going to happen. John Moxley is going to be like the version of Sting when they were begging and pleading for Sting to join the NWO or Diamond Dallas Page, and every time they thought they'd get him to join, they would just take out the entire group. So I see, John Moxley doing something similar to that. And speaking of the Inner Circle, I'm really hoping that Jake Hager, a.k.a. Jack Swagger, actually starts wrestling and doesn't just act as like some kind of grunt guy in the background that doesn't talk and who's Jericho's, only his backup, so to speak. So, hopefully we'll see Jack Swagger in the near future and he'll get some matches in. I like to see more of Luchasaurus. Personally, if one of those jungle dudes were going to wrestle Jericho for the title, it should have been Luchasaurus. To me, that would have been much better. He's got a good following. He gets big pops, and just having Jungle Boy against Jericho to me is just it's like a Davey and Goliath kind of thing. And also, how many wins does Jungle Boy even have to be, championship contender material? To me, it makes no sense. Cody Rhodes is emphasizing on having, Cody Rhodes is having like this whole thing he emphasizes on having a win-loss record. So if you look at Jungle Boy's win-loss record, it's not even being contendership for like a mid-card lower title match, like say if they had like their version of like a US or an IC title, so how is he even being in contendership for the heavyweight title? It makes no sense to me. But like I said, it's a space filler for the end of the year, and hopefully going into 2020, AEW will get some more people on their roster. Now we're gonna have to wait for March. We got guys like Luke Harper, who's left WWE. He was released. And speaking of people who were released, I don't know if you guys saw, but Sin Cara is supposed to have a 90-day no-compete clause. Not only did he show up at AAA, but he's using the Sin Cara name. So this should be interesting. WWE may have a potential lawsuit where, it's justified because, let's be honest. Sin Cara went against the whole no compete clause for the 90 days. Here he got released a few days ago, and he's showing up at AAA, wearing the Sin Cara gear. I mean, to me, that's just looking for trouble. Not too bright, if you ask me. So now, aside from that, with AEW, you have a lot of interesting things are going on, and a lot of people are going to be coming down the pike. So hopefully, I just hope that AEW doesn't turn into like WCW version 2, and all they have is like former WWE stars or guys from WWE that are like winding down their career. Because I want AEW to succeed. Obviously, I'm supporting them, and I'm really hoping that they offer an alternative. And with that said, being a WWE fan my entire life, we're talking now over 41 or 42 years, I'm really hoping that the old school fan in me, as you can see, I got my DX shirt on, I'd go back even way before the Attitude Era, but I'm really hoping that we start getting some storylines and some good writing and some builds and allowing more freedom, more creativity for the workers to let them, flow and be themselves, as Stone Cold would say, with the volume turned up. Because, I feel like they're like being held by the wrists, like they're being handcuffed, and they're being force-fed lines in the headsets in their ears, and just being told what to do and how to act, for commentary or even workers in the ring. And it's just not organic, and it's not going to work. So hopefully, WWE eventually will, get back to the old way of doing things, and moving forward, we'll actually have wrestlers being themselves with the volume turned up. So speaking of the new year, I think I discussed this briefly last time. There's something already, tell you people being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And that's been a hot button topic this week. I mean, I can see, for the NWO, I can see Hogan, Hall, and Nash, being inducted. And that makes sense because they're the founding members of the NWO along with Eric Bischoff. But no disrespect to X-Pac, Sean Waltman. He was a great guy, great worker. He was a big part of that group, as well as, DX. And recently, Sean Waltman got his, the last Hall of Fame, rather, he got his due, as part of DX. And not that he doesn't deserve any accolades with the NWO, but if you really want to be technical and go back in time, Hall and Nash started before the NWO. Was pre-NWO was the Outsiders. First, Hall showed up, then a week or two later, Nash showed up. And then as they're wrestling as the Outsiders at Bash at the Beach, and obviously, by now, 20 plus years later, we all know that the third man was Hogan. But if you remember, that night when Hogan turned heel and he beat down Savage and Sting, and when he was being interviewed in the ring by the late, great Mean Gene Okerlund, Mean Gene said, look at all this crap in the ring. And Hogan said, well, this crap represents the fans. But more importantly, Hogan said, you can call this, meaning him, Hall, and Nash, you can call this the New World Order of Wrestling, brother. So that was the day the New World Order was officially born at Bash at the Beach. And if you remember, a couple of years ago when the Horsemen were all inducted into the Hall of Fame, James J. Dillon, their manager, he was also inducted along with the Four Horsemen because he was their manager, he was their mouthpiece, he took care of the boys, and he took bumps occasionally, and he was always part of the action. He was always part of the program. And I feel that Eric Bischoff is the equivalent to a James J. Dillon, where Bischoff should get inducted into the Hall of Fame with Hogan, Hall, and Nash. And that's it. I feel if you're going to induct X-Pac, you might as well induct Big Show, Fake Sting, Norton, Bagwell, Virgil, and everybody else who, all the hundreds of people that were in the New World Order. There were like a million different variations. You had the Wolf Pack, you had the red and black, the white and black, Latino World Order, the Blue World Order, and ECW. I mean, there's so many different variations. I feel that the only members that were wrestlers should be Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and Bischoff as an honorary person inducted, equivalent to James J. Dillon from the Four Horsemen. That's my take on it, and I'm going to stick to it. Congrats to Batista going into the Hall of Fame. I feel that's well-deserved. I mean, the guy busted his ass. He started at a late age. I believe he started with WWE in 2002. He came in, as Deacon Batista, with Devon Dudley. And after that, he made it work, and he had a hell of a run. I mean, he came out of a great class with OVW. If you remember the guys that came out of OVW out of that class, you had John Cena, you had Brock Lesnar, you had Batista, you had Shelton Benjamin, and you had Randy Orton. Those 5 guys all came out of the same class in OVW. That's pure talent. And, you just don't get that today. And what I mean by that is, and, I'm not going to disrespect people in NXT because I'm a big fan of NXT, but, I don't know if this is a good segue, but I'm going to use it as a segue. Recently Jim Ross went on the air stating that they should bring steroids in wrestling. Now, I couldn't believe that Jim Ross said that, because we all know what steroids can do. We all know how bad they are. We know what they can do for you. But you also know at the same time that steroids, eventually, it's going to kill you. It's going to rip right through you. If you look at, guys like Lyle Zato, back in the day when he played for the Raiders, and the whole thing was, he died of brain cancer. And the thing is, sorry, I got to fix these glasses. They're messing me up. So Lyle Zato, he took steroids and made him look better, but then, he didn't last too long after that, right? And, superstar Billy Graham, perfect example. The guy's bones are basically black, and he's still preaching to people today to take steroids. That's just pure ignorance. I was raised in the 70s. I seen it all, and I see what happened to people from taking roids. Superstar Billy Graham lost a couple inches in height from the steroids, along with Hogan and other guys. So I feel that there is a place in wrestling for smaller guys, but I feel that smaller guys, they should wrestle people that's more believable. No disrespect to Daniel Bryan, but I remember back at WrestleMania, you take a guy like Batista, and they let Batista tap out to Daniel Bryan. Now, I knew he was a hot commodity back then. Big fan of Daniel Bryan, but come on. We all know how wrestling is to begin with, but let's make it a little believable, they should have had someone else tap out to Daniel Bryan that night, not Batista or Triple H or even Orton. All three of them. How believable is having a guy like Daniel Bryan beat those three guys? And that's my point. But if you want to have guys like Daniel Bryan or like, say, Adam Cole from NXT or Roderick Strong, you have, the tag team, you have Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly. All these guys, not taking anything away. They're great wrestlers, but, they're not the biggest dogs in the fight. And, to have these guys as champions, I kind of question it, only because, they're not that big. But I don't think steroids is the answer. And for someone as accomplished as Jim Ross to say that, I think it was ridiculous. Guys like Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, and others, I think they're great wrestlers. But I feel if you're going to bulk up and get big, you should just do like the regular route and just work out the right way. If you look in the background, I got my Bowflex back there. I got my speed bag. I hit the gym. I don't have the, body of an Adonis, but whatever I have is all natural, and it's, no steroids. And, I'm a big person who's, who totally believes in working out the right way. So moving forward, I hope these guys don't take what Jim Ross said into consideration and consider doing it, because you can be a great performer without it. Obviously it makes you look, better, cosmetically, but in the future, all it's going to do is just mess with your health, and you're not going to have any longevity in wrestling or in life. So anybody out there that's breaking into the business or is in the business, listen to Brooklyn's own Toddy D. Don't take steroids. They're not cool. They're not good for you. And all it does is give you bad side effects. So that's the last thing you need to do. But, getting off that, tonight's Monday Night Raw. It should be interesting with Seth Rollins, with this newfound, group with the faction of him and the AOP. It reminds me of the Shield version too, because if you remember, Akon and Razor, they used to, wrestle in NXT, and they had those flight suit jackets that were similar to the Shield. So it should be interesting to see if these guys all, go to the same costume designer, so to speak, and they get the same outfits. It'd be kind of funny if you ask me. But having Seth Rollins now as a heel, he's not a full-blown heel yet, but if he becomes full-blown heel, I, for one, would love to see the blonde streak back in the hair again and have that that laugh he would have whenever he got all, sarcastic on someone and he cut one of those bad promos, and he would always have like that really, wise guy type of laugh. So I'm hoping he brings back that kind of version of his character and goes full total blown heel. And it'd be kind of interesting to see if all three of them wear flight jackets, and it would be something like a Shield version too. In a way, it'd be pretty cool, but I kind of hope they don't do it, because I want to see some originality. I want to see, where this faction's going to go. And, we got to find out what happened to KO, because, he got beat down last week, and, see where he winds up. And also, speaking of, returns and wrestlers, welcome back to John Morrison. It's been 8 years since, we've seen the Shaman of Sexy in the ring for WWE. I think John Morrison is only getting started. He's done a lot since he left WWE, being in, several companies, AAA, and a bunch of others that he was involved in. I was watching The Bump the other day, and they were showing some footage, and they also showed footage of him at the Performance Center, how he, does all those flips and runs around and does all that crazy Power Ranger type stuff. The guy is jacked. He's in great shape. And I, for one, I'm really hoping, that he goes to one of the main, shows. No disrespect to NXT. I think they put on a great show, but someone like John Morrison, I feel he belongs on Raw or SmackDown. I really hope they don't pair him up with The Miz or have him feud with The Miz, because we all know they're good buddies and they're still boys. I want The Miz to do his thing, and I want John Morrison to do his own thing. I, for one, just wish that it wasn't, that cat didn't get out of the bag, so to speak. I was kind of hoping that, like the old days, they'd have like a surprise and, not know that John Morrison was back and, somehow try to keep it a secret. Or even if people knew he was coming back, not discuss it. So when the Royal Rumble came around, he could be like a surprise entrant, like number 30. When CM Punk first came back to FS1, I was really hoping that CM Punk was going to start a program with Seth Rollins, but obviously that's not going to happen. Well, at least it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So at the time I said, it'd be really cool if Seth Rollins, started the Royal Rumble like in the beginning or somewhere in the beginning. And then, he's the 28th guy still in the ring. Number 29 comes in. They fight for a couple of minutes. He gets rid of that guy. And then the 30th person that comes out would have been CM Punk to the Cult of Personality. And then the look on Seth Rollins' face would have been awesome. And then that could have started their, feud for WrestleMania. So with that being said, since that's not going to happen, I thought it would have been pretty cool if the Shaman of Sexy would have returned at the Rumble, hopefully in January. He'll return, and maybe John Morrison can have a program with Seth Rollins, because I think those two would light it up, and it would be awesome. That's just my opinion. So, I'm hoping that 2020 is going to be a great year. Hopefully, Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast is just getting started, and in the new year, there'll be plenty of episodes, and there'll be plenty of feedback. And, I love everyone's feedback. I love all the likes and the comments on Twitter, whether it's pro or con. I welcome them all. There's no such thing as a bad review. All reviews to me are good reviews, good, bad, or indifferent. As long as I'm getting the likes and the attention, I love it. And if you have any, ideas or anything you want to hear Brooklyn's own Toddy D discuss on Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast, please let me know at Toddy D Wrestling on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. This is going to go up in a couple of minutes. I just got to do some little tweets and, little adjusting here and there before I put it up the way I want to have it. But, it's going to be up soon. I hope you guys listen. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'm going to get out of here because pretty soon Monday Night Raw is going to start. And, usually it's like a snooze fest, but I'm hoping that it's going to be pretty good. So we'll see what happens. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy Monday Night Raw tonight. Enjoy the Wednesday Night Wars, if you want to call them wars, come Wednesday. And we'll see what happens. And I'll be back to you guys at the end of the week with another edition of Toddy D's Pro Wrestling Podcast. Until then, have a great night. And I'll see all you guys at ringside.